Alright, this is 3rd grade ELA text set 12, The Importance of Determination. Nonfiction biography is the genre. Alright, today I'm going to read you the book Nothing But Trouble, the story of Ethel Gibson, written by Sue Staffnatcher and illustrated by Greg Couch. This book is a biography, a book that gives facts and information about a real person named Althea Gibson. What can you tell about Althea Gibson from the picture on the cover? Everyone says so, but Athena knows she's going to be somebody someday, something big. Buddy Walker knows it too, as at the recreation leader on Althea's Harlem Street. He buys her a stringed racket and introduces her to the game of tennis. It's not easy. Althea doesn't like the polite rules of the court. She doesn't like having to act like a lady, and she does not like to lose, but she loves the game, and soon Althea is on her way to becoming a great athlete, if she can just stay out of trouble. With lively text and vibrant paintings, author Sue Schaffer and illustrator Greg Crouch offer a funny and moving tribute to the first African-American ever to compete for and win the Wimbledon Cup. So, what do you know about Althea Gibson now? What do you think you'll learn from this biography? Althea Gibson was the tallest, wildest tomboy in the history of Harlem. Everybody said so. Her mama said, "Just give that child a nickel for a loaf of bread and see what happens. Soon as she catches sight of those boys playing stickball, my bread is long forgotten." Her daddy said, "That girl stays out so late playing basketball she doesn't even come home some nights." Her teacher said, "Half the time she doesn't even return from recess. I'd see a lot more of Althea if I taught lessons on the playground." The policeman said, "She's a fast runner, all right, but you can't make a sport out of nicking sweet potatoes. That's against the law." They all said Althea Gibson was you're nothing but trouble. And she didn't care what they said. She knew that she would be somebody someday, somebody big like Charlie Parker or Sugar Ray. In the meantime, just one thing to care about in this world, the game. Give her a stick, a paddle, a hoop, or a ball, and Althea Gibson was good to go. So have you noticed anything interesting about the illustrations yet? Why do you think the illustrations did that? What does it tell you about Althea? And Charlie Parker was a jazz musician and Sugar Ray Robinson was a boxer. They were famous of African American figures in the 1940s. When Althea was growing up, she knew she would be famous like they were. Buddy Walker was the play leader down on 143rd Street, where Athena lived. At night, he was a musician in one of Harlem's society orchestras. When Buddy watched Althea play paddle tennis, he didn't say nothing but trouble. No, sir, except maybe for the poor rubber ball. What he saw in Althea was pure possibility. Times were hard, but Buddy scrounged up enough money to buy Althea a string tennis racket at a second-hand store. It didn't look like much next to the big wooden paddle Althea normally used for street tennis. After she practiced a little, Buddy asked a friend at the Harlem River tennis courts to play a few sets with her. As Althea covered the court, Buddy forgot all about the wild tomboy who roamed the streets of Harlem. What Buddy saw was music in the way she moved. Buddy wasn't the only one. Other players stopped their games to get a look at her. Althea saw the other players watching her. It felt good, made her feel like she was somebody. "Althea," Buddy said after the game, trying to contain his excitement, "this is Juan Cyril, a friend of mine. We have an idea." Juan Cyril belonged to the Cosmopolitan, the richest tennis club in Harlem. All the Sugar Hill Society people belonged there. "You play tennis here," Buddy told Althea. "You can make something of yourself." After the members of the club saw what Althea could do, Buddy and Juan convinced a few of them to pay for lessons with the club's one-armed tennis pro, Fred Johnson. Fred tried to improve Althea's ways on and off the court. While Althea loved playing a new game on a big fancy court, she didn't like being told how to act. "Never said I wanted to be a fine lady," she complained to Buddy. Unfortunately for her, the members of the Cosmopolitan didn't like her wild ways either. They shook their heads and whispered nothing but trouble, that one. Miss Rhoda Smith was a nice society lady who bought Althea her first tennis outfit, so she looked like all the other players on the court. She made time to play regularly with Althea and to instruct her in the polite rules of the sport. "Now, Althea, when a loose ball rolls onto the court, you don't just bat it out of the way in any old direction. You send it back to the player it belongs to. That's how it's done in the court tennis." "Ah, Mrs. Smith," Althea muttered, "can we just play tennis?" Buddy tried to explain the importance of keeping cool. "You've got to decide, Althea. Are you going to play your game, or are you going to let the game play you? When I go to the jazz club, I play like a tiger, but I wear a tuxedo." Althea said, throwing her tennis racket on the ground. "I don't fit with these rich society folks. I'd rather punch somebody's lights out at Stillman's gym." Buddy said, "Althea, I still believe." A year later, Althea was in her first real tennis tournament. She played well, but she lost in the finals to Nana Davis. "After I beat her," Nana told the reporter, "she headed straight to the grandstand without bothering to shake my hand. Some kid had been laughing at her, and she was going to throw him out. I tell you, Althea Gibson is nothing but trouble." It took long time, but slowly Althea learned that wanting to slug her opponent as soon as she started, losing her match made her a worse tennis player than if she kept her cool. With Buddy's help, Althea realized she could dress up in white and act like a lady and still beat the liver and lights out of the ball. So, how would you describe Althea based on what you know about her so far? Tennis changed Althea all right, but just as importantly, ever since Miss Gibson rallied in the second set of the women's finals, she has proven to be nothing but trouble for seasoned U.S. and World Cup champ Louis Brock. Althea changed tennis. She did it. Ladies and gentlemen, she did it. Althea Gibson has won the championship here at the Wimbledon's Central Court. With that, Althea Gibson became the first African-American man or woman ever to compete and win the coveted Wimbledon Cup, long considered the highest honor in tennis. And she never did forget the man who first saw the champion of the world in the wildest tomboy in Harlem. Tonight is the conclusion of a long and satisfying journey. It all started on one of the New York's play streets when Buddy Walker, a play street supervisor, said, "Althea, I believe you could become a good lawn tennis player." With those words, he handed me my first tennis racket. Tonight, I thank Buddy Walker for a most satisfying victory. Author's note. Althea Gibson was born in 1927 into a family of sharecroppers. In 1957, she became the greatest female tennis player in the world. Althea Gibson lived the American dream, but dreams aren't achieved alone. Though this is Althea's story, it is also Buddy Walker's story when he reached out to a child who was not his own, but by buying her a tennis racket, Buddy set in motion all the wonderful things to come for Althea, who was always gracious about acknowledging the people who helped her turn her life around. "If I've made it," she wrote, "if it's half because I was game to take a wicked amount of punishment along the way, and half because there were an awful lot of people who cared enough to help me."